How's everybody doing? Good? A couple glasses with lunch, everybody smiling? Good, good. My name is Ethan Rudin. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Rhapsody, known here as Napster. I've been at the company for, going on 20 months now, so almost 2 years. Prior to that, I have absolutely zero music business experience, so this should be well interesting if anybody wants to ask a doozy. In addition, obviously, what you would assume a CFO does, accounting, tax, et cetera. I also run our global BD team, and I also run our label relations team. So that in and of itself is more than a few full-time jobs, but nonetheless, I have a presentation. I'm not sure if it's going to come up if I do that. Oh, look at that. So I'm going to run through this really quick so that we can get to the chat aspect of this, and then obviously more than happy to take questions. And as Ben would indicate, there's really nothing in my mind that's off limits. So please make them tough, make them hard, and keep me sweating. This is something our PR team decided to put on a slide for all of you to see, and quite honestly, as a lifetime music enthusiast, I was in a Beastie Boy cover band for quite some time. I was a college disc jockey on air, and I was that guy that you met at university that spent all of his disposable income on compact discs and shows, and I've had plenty of them swiped from my rooms. And so the fact that now I work at a company that was the very first digital streaming music service, and arguably 13 years too early to our own party, this is a pretty amazing fact. This is something that people in all areas of the music industry are having a really, really difficult time getting used to, and it's something we're very, very excited about, because one of the things about Rhapsody and Napster is if you're with us, you're paying. We don't have a perpetually free service for you to be listening to music for the rest of your life. The fact now that music subscriptions and streaming music is generating more revenue than the compact disc is absolutely terrific. We like our position. We like these facts. And the real question is, well, what are we all going to do about it? This is one of those really, really lovely graphs that shows up and to the right that you want to show everybody. But this is effectively our subscriber growth since five years into the company. I joined the company right here, and a couple of things were going on. A couple of things were going on right here to speak about. This is where we started to focus a lot of our time and attention on not just delivering a great consumer experience to the direct-to-consumer business, but also really started to think long and hard about, well, how do you go out and you compete with free? Lots of people out there have grown accustomed to and have been trained that music isn't something you pay for. It's something that you just get on the computer and it's given to you, and you can make your playlists. And if you're a person that doesn't really care too much about the order in which that playlist comes out, you can have a perfectly fine, somewhat on-demand experience for $0. And so for us, what does that mean? Well, we're competing with free. We need to really do something to accelerate our subscriber growth. And if you think about, everybody here has a smartphone, and everybody here probably consumes the majority of their digital media on that smartphone. This was when we started to focus on A, going global, and B, putting ourselves on more phones and putting them on phones in a programmatic, strategic, and intelligent fashion. We signed a deal by which we are one of the exclusive music providers to Telefonica. It helps us enter into new geographies through this wholesale business, and we try to build a direct-to-consumer business on the back of it. And so that's when the chart really starts to take off. Right now, I'm proud to say that we have well over 2.5 million subscribers across 32 countries, and oddly, they all pay. This is a very impressive page full of logos. But again, what I would focus this group on is the fact that where we really start to take off in terms of that subscriber growth is on the carrier side. auto, video games, retailers. A lot of our most recent success has been around our ability to be consultative salespeople. We're very, very generous with our brands. For example, in Brazil, when we're with Vivo, we're Vivo Musica, powered by Napster. It's a type of confidence and a type of generosity and a type of consultative sale that comes from being in this business for so very long and understanding how to get mobile carriers to integrate on our APIs, how to really focus on the local geographies and providing them with the content that they're most interested in, and really just understanding how to be good partners and understanding that at some point, with or without the mobile carrier, these are consumers that we're touching. We're trying to reduce the churn for the mobile carriers, so they're our customer as well. But we really want to create a great mobile experience. At the end of the day, we're the music store of the future. There is no more Tower Records to go to. There is no more HMV. And so the people who are truly successful here are going to be the ones who can engender that emotional connection that you had on New Release Tuesday when you went to the store and walked in to buy the 2 CDs you knew were coming out, but you walked out with the 8 that you didn't know you wanted because you had an experience. That's something that's very special. It's been something very special to me. It's guided, obviously, some career decisions I've made, and we'd like to believe that we can harken back to those days. Everybody loves a Mac page. We're global. As I said, we're in 32 countries. Again, a lot of that geographic growth has been based on our ability to be good partners to mobile carriers who are looking to create maybe a little bit more buzz, a little bit more brand association, but really reducing churn and providing a value-added service that, let's be honest, it's a daily habit. I mean, music is something that people will listen to multiple times a day. There's a lot of different types of need states, and a lot of those need states can be met on your mobile phone. Frankly, over 70% of our users are using our service on a mobile phone. And in Latin America, only, I think it's over 90% are using it mobile only. If you think about what's going on in some of the emerging markets, and I'd cite Brazil, I mean, this is the first introduction to a computer a lot of these folks have. And so when I say we're trying to be flexible and we're trying to be really good partners, we come out with weekly tiers for people who are making the decision this week, do I want music or do I want groceries? But again, I come back to the point, they all pay. This is a snapshot of the company right now, and in my time, we're up over 2.5 million subscribers. I've said that a few times. 80% of the listeners are using it on mobile apps. In terms of royalties paid to rights holders, my first year we paid over $100 million to rights holders. That includes record labels, publishers, songwriters, et cetera, et cetera. And just to give you some perspective of what that number looks like, as recently as today, there's been press around Sony removing their service, or removing their content rather, from SoundCloud, and the big soundbite that SoundCloud will come back with says we have paid $2 million in fees to rights holders for their content. So give you some perspective. We have 250 people worldwide. We have an office in Frankfurt. Our headquarters is in Seattle. We have an office in New York, an office in Sao Paulo. Again, reason is we want to be on the ground where people are listening to the music. We want to be on the ground where our mobile carrier partners are so that we can curate products and experiences for their consumers that are relevant, local, and have the music that these folks want to listen to. Over 60% paid subscriber growth between 13 and 14. That trend is continuing. And now, where we were previously a predominantly a direct-to-consumer business, we're now predominantly a carrier business. This is the landscape. A lot of people want to jump in the pool. Not everybody can swim. But, our competition is fierce. Our competition is well-funded. Our competition is aggressive. We love it. A rising tide raises all ships. It validates the business we've been in. Even folks like Jay-Z want to be in our business. So we're excited about it. It's, other people say you should be terrified. It's a fabulous opportunity. And again, if you're out there trying to curate the best emotional connection to the music and the service and your consumers, competition's the competition. You have to be cognizant of it. You have to respect it. But it's what you stand for, what you represent, and how you go about competing with them is what's going to define you, and that's the way we feel. What's next? Well, I'm hoping Ben's going to ask me a lot about that. I'm hoping we can all engage in a conversation about that. Sure, they're not shy of opinions in the room. I've got plenty of them, too. And just honored and flattered to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ethan. So let's cut straight to the chase, right? So you talked about competition. You talked about that heavy competitive landscape. Great performance to get to 2.5 million paying subs. Last 7 months of last year, Spotify added double that number, right? They added double that number in that 7-month period. How do you compete with that?
Getting back to my earlier point that we were probably 13 years too early for our own party, I would say that there have been 2 apertures forced open in that time in the music business. One was when, in the interest of fighting piracy, Apple compelled the music industry to allow folks to sell 99-cent tracks. If you think about the music business as a whole, it's always been a model that's been based on breakage. You want to have a song, you buy a CD, and I'll come back to answer your question eventually here. But you spend $20.
Give yourself time.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. You bought a CD, but frankly, most of the money was made off of what wasn't being listened to, as opposed to what was being listened to. That's always the way it's been. And so, with the ability to sell tracks, you're breaking that. The other aperture that's been forced open was that the music business allowed Spotify to give music away for free. With the hopes that eventually folks who are listening to Spotify free will convert. A lot of rhetoric, a lot of discussion in the media openly and publicly that perhaps record labels are giving away too much of that value for too little money-making opportunity. And so we have the belief that at some point, look, it's never going to just get shut off, but it will eventually snap back where folks are concerned about running a real business other than investing in digital streaming music businesses. And they'll want to create commercial terms that evoke the idea that consumers should be paying for music. And so we just have a fundamental belief that we watch their success and we watch the adoption, and we're really excited about what they've done because we don't really have a price sensitivity problem. We have an education problem. If you were to sit down a group of intelligent people and ask them what's the difference between Spotify, Pandora, Rhapsody, Deezer, Google Play, all of these intelligent people would give you very different answers. And so I think as an industry, we've done a very poor job of educating the consumer what the value proposition is, because quite frankly, I used to work at Starbucks, and watching what people spend on a daily basis there, I think that $10 a month for all the music you can consume is a far better value proposition, as much as I really enjoy coffee.
So are you relying on the industry effectively forcing Spotify at some point to go pay only?
Well,
to give up on the freemium business model?
Yeah, I mean...
Is that going to happen? Is that realistic?
I think it may actually be, if I'm really honest with myself. It doesn't go away entirely. Mm-hmm. If you want to create a music service that has an element of community, an element of sharing, profiling, arguably your music collection, if you're a music geek like I was your first foray into social media, because you used to proudly have your vinyl and your CDs on display in your room, and regardless who you are, what you look like, people would come and take a look at that when they visit you, and it would say a lot about the type of person you are. And so I think that the industry itself and the service we provide needs to morph into something that looks more like that, which is why you see the proliferation of all of the social media moving towards music. And I think that that's going to need to come together. And to have that, there will have to be some offering that is free, but it doesn't necessarily need to be as good as it is today. You want people incentivized for a more premium experience, and it's watching what Tidal is doing and watching what Jay-Z is doing with their service, that gives me some real confidence that that world is there, because they're trying to land people at a $20 price point, which is fabulous.
And I think your socks tell a lot about
Oh,
about the person you are.
Well, I
by the way,
appreciate
right?
that. This means I love this country. Yeah.
So you mentioned Jay-Z, you mentioned Tidal. Is that a flash in the pan? Is that going to be around for the long term, or is it just a blip?
It's a really, really great question. And how do I say this other than I just say it? I think he was on Twitter last week or the week before saying he had 770,000 subscribers. So, hey guys, I'm doing just fine.
Yep.
I know that 500 of those are probably from an acquisition of Aspiro, which means that in less than a month's time, he's been able to amass 250,000 people who have been prepared to put down a credit card to try the service because you can't do it any other way. And so, while you have the media and whoever saying what a failure this is, I think the only thing that was a failure was from a PR perspective, having bazillionaires on stage saying I want to be double a bazillionaire. Maybe that doesn't really play into the message you're trying to deliver to people, where I'm going to bring up my crew of new musicians and artists into this ecosystem and feel them, try and get them paid for their recorded music. If that's the only failure, I'd love that kind of failure every month.
So a lot of your growth has been built around partnerships, especially with telcos, right? You mentioned Telefonica, you've had some others on the slide,
SFR,
bunch of
T-Mobile.
those.
Yeah.
So strikes me that kind of partnership is, has pros and cons, right? It helps you achieve scale, but presumably there's a downside in terms of loss of control, squeezing of margins, etc. Is that fair?
Look, squeezing of margins, it's any time you have a retail business and you move into a wholesale business, it's very hard to preserve your margin. But at the end of the day, people are obviously, based on the success you cite at Spotify, whether it's public opinion, whether it's the capital markets, people are focused on subscriber and subscriber growth. This is a watershed year, as I say, for streaming music and subscription music. And so to make sure that you're relevant and you continue to stay competitive, scale matters and scale counts. And those mobile carriers, they provide us with that scale and put us in countries we haven't been in before, in a less risky, less low cost, higher ROI subscriber acquisition. So yeah, it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, but I'd say it's more of a blessing because we do it in a really honest, authentic, and genuine way. So,
and when those customers are taking your service through one of your mobile partners, do they always know that they are paying for the music?
Great question.
Since you've been so vocal about the value of music, that consumers should be cognizant that they should be paying.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. What I would say is that, I don't know, when you sign up for a mobile service and you get a data plan and it comes with mapping, or it comes with, do you know you're paying for it? It's bundled pricing. You get to a hotel and they throw in a free breakfast. I don't think for 3 seconds that the breakfast is free, but I'd like to consider myself, depending on the day, somewhat intelligent, and so yeah, I know I'm paying. Do they know they're paying? Look, at some point those contracts are up, and we have a decision to make. How do we keep that consumer? And so if they don't know they're paying, eventually one day they will. And we hope they stay because they love the service and they love what we provide, and they've made playlists and they want the same one when they go to the gym, or they want the same one when they're in the car with their children. Again, it's very much like your family photos, your music and your music collection. It touches an emotional part of your soul. And I just, for $10 a month, hopefully we don't have massive churn events. We've had a carrier wind down in Metro PCS, and we haven't had that experience. It's all been very, very positive in terms of our ability to hang on to subscribers and our ability to get, even if we don't cut the same deal, the mobile carrier to re-up with us and continue to offer the service.
So we had some discussion earlier today about the online video business, and I was also introducing in my opening remarks some analysis of Netflix in a different subscription streaming part of the business. Now, one of the things that Netflix has done to drive its growth is spend huge sums on content, and particularly original content.
That's right.
In the digital music market, one of the things that immediately strikes you is that, essentially all of the services have pretty much the same content, right?
That's right.
Everyone has everything.
Table stakes.
That's a hard marketplace to compete with, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unless you can differentiate your content in some way. Do you see that changing? Do you see some windowing strategies, some exclusivities happening? Maybe the company that makes these might step in and try and create some exclusives. What do you think?
Well, getting back to Tidal, they arguably had 16 of the most influential and revenue-generative artists up on the stage, and those artists make up a healthy proportion of the streaming that's done on Napster and Rhapsody. So, I don't know that the windowing and the industry going the direction of the film and industry is great for the consumer, because you don't want to have to subscribe to every single service to have every single artist. That said, it's definitely a clear path to differentiate. And I think you'll see a lot more of it. I mean, we experienced it when Taylor Swift put a new album out and decided she wanted her whole catalog pulled off of Spotify because she couldn't say, I only want this in the paid service. And fortunately for us, while we didn't have the new album, she kept our entire back catalog with us because she knows that we're good actors in the industry and we're not offering, a perpetually free service to people. And so I think that it's a very, very good question. It's one that's going to play out over the next year or two. And I would say the one danger, pointing to the tablet that you're holding and the logo you were alluding to, is they still dominate when it comes to download and sales. And so God forbid the day that you're an artist and you decide that you want to put your music out for sale and for stream, and because it's exclusive but not on their site, they decide they're not going to market and sell you in the iTunes store. That's when you're going to have to decide as a recording artist, like, where do you stand and what kind of message do you want to send to consumers and your fans? And yeah, great question.
Questions from the floor. I've got one more for Ethan while the mic is finding, but put your hand up and we'll come to you straight away. So let's roll the clock forward 5 years.
Man, are we old.
Right?
Yeah.
How many of those logos you showed on that slide in this marketplace will still exist in this digital music market?
I mean, you're watching it today, right? Beats was bought by Apple. Jay-Z.
Groove gone already from there.
Jay-Z bought a
German one disappeared the other
Simfi.
day. Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. There will be, in fact, I'll even delineate it for you. There will be people who want to sell you devices, and as a result, they're going to have a streaming service because they want to sell you more devices. There will be retailers that have a streaming service because they want to sell you, I don't know, diapers and Q-tips and things. And there will be a healthy stack of super stack companies that have something else to sell you, and they will have music as a part of their offering. There will also be a couple of pure plays out there, Spotify being the leading one right now. And I think there's room for, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, maybe 2. Yeah, that'd be great if there was just the two of us. But I mean, look, it gets back to that. Being the record store of the future. There's no one single place to go anymore where anybody could say, well, this is where you go if you want music. There's places where you could go if you want certain genre of music. There's a certain place you could go if you want a certain format or file type of music or a certain type of editorial content. But there's no one spot for all of it, and frankly, some of my earlier comments around the community building and around the chatting and around the profile, there will also be e-commerce, there will be ticketing, there will be merchandise, and we're just still in such early innings because people just don't know. And as the education comes along, the product will come along, and we're just tickled to be one of the top 2 right now of the pure plays.
Question here.
Hi, name's Laurie Kay, a digital media lawyer, but not a legal question. Kind of relates to what Ben was saying. A consistent message you hear from a lot of artists, not necessarily music, but authors, right across the creative industries, is about the level of royalties that are paid, the level of return they get from this. If you were addressing an audience of creatives, how would you see the future for them, whether in terms of better royalty rates or shares of other revenues? How does the future look for them?
It's a great question, and I wouldn't want to sound flip about it, but in an age and day where everyone's a celebrity and everybody's a star, and you can write one song, it doesn't even have to be that good, but if it's catchy, it's out there, and then you can decide to make an album, and you're a YouTube sensation, and then you're a massive Grammy-winning recording artist. I mean, step one is make sure your product's really good. And there's just a lot out there now to sift through that, frankly, some of it's really good and some of it's really bad. So first and foremost, make great art that people want to pay for. Secondly, I would say there's a lot of just not being in control of your own destiny and signing agreements and not having fabulous representation like I'm sure you are. And just be really well informed before you sign away your goods, because how it's distributed, how it's marketed, what that looks like going forward, it's an entirely different ballgame than it once was. And in a way, it's better because you can assert more control and take more control of your own destiny. But in a way, it's worse because there's just so much that you have to stand out from. But if I were to characterize it to 2 kind of main points, I'd say make sure your product's just great and people want to buy it, and make sure you're in control of where it's put and how it's put there and the price at which you can charge for it.
Next question. Go ahead.
Hi there. Work for Sony Mobile. We've got a question about high-res audio, so quality.
Yeah.
You've got an iPhone 6 Plus in your pocket. We've got an Xperia Z3, which can deliver high-res audio, and there is a difference.
It's fabulous, by the way. I've heard it.
I wondered what your thoughts were, because obviously it's a much higher bandwidth and a much larger track, what your thoughts are in regards to quality, because consumers maybe get more educated from MP3 to the other end of the spectrum, and where you stand on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have yet to really jump into the pool in terms of offering a high-resolution service. Obviously, there's lots of different ones out there that are available. I would say that the industry in and of itself, for the mass, is not quite there yet. I mean, if you're listening to your music from an MP3 on your little white headphones off of your mobile device, I mean, you could have high res, you could have 320, you could have, you're not going to really be able to hear the difference. So I think it's probably more of a niche market right now. But look, the fact that, again, Tidal's been able to come out with a high res solution and people are actually trying it is great. And it tells me that there's an opportunity, again, to bring ARPU up because people are going to be delivered more value. And there are people that care, which is also very inspiring to me. But yeah, I think it's just too early innings for it yet,
I think there was another question up here. Yep.
Hi, David Treadway from Babcock Media Services. I wonder how you see your relationship with broadcast radio. I'm mindful of the fact that most modern phones, including the iPhone and so on, have FM radio chips in them, although most network operators haven't turned them on, with the exception, I think, of a couple in the States. I mean, what happens to your business when suddenly you can listen to broadcast radio on that device as well as through your app?
We actually have within the Rhapsody and Napster service the ability to listen to broadcast radio stations from around the world on the service. So, in terms of a direct relationship, not much of one, but people who want to have that capability have it within our service already. So, yeah, it's there. I don't know how else to answer the question.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is whether you see yourselves in any sense in competition with with FM radio, for example.
Maybe expand and talk about
Yeah.
radio more generally and
Yeah,
the way
I mean,
you try
look,
to innovate in radio as
Yeah,
well.
the bottom line is we're already in competition with the folks who are directly in competition with broadcast radio, and I cite Pandora. Obviously, Pandora is not global in nature. I think it's offered in the United States and then also in parts of Australia. So frankly, when we think about the competition and getting people to pay for subscriptions, that we view that as kind of the second derivative of the competition from broadcast radio. Look, we offer a very, very different product, right? Our kind of quote-unquote radio is more of a curated, smart radio that plays to a genre. It's intelligent. It listens to what you're listening to and then serves you up something next that they think you like, because ultimately our relationship with radio is we want to bring you along such that you're compelled to convert to a full on-demand service. So, I mean, while it's competition, we're more, I think, a replacement for going to that album store, that record store, and having that full control. Radio and Pandora-style services are for people who don't really care what they're listening to. I mean, they could put on the Who channel, and whether they actually hear a Who song or not, it's just background noise to them. And while we want them to learn and we want them to be a part of our service, you know, those people don't really care, and they'll eventually come along, and we just don't worry about it as much as maybe we should, perhaps, based on your question.
Please join me in thanking Ethan for making this trip especially.